The Commissioner was in here recently and we had a discussion with him about the operation in Limerick, where a lot of men were actually prosecuted or charged, or whatever the word was used, for soliciting. I think there were undercover officers involved. Could you comment on that at all? Where does that come in here, or does it come in here? Or?
Well, as I said at the outset, I think at the beginning of whatever model is put in place by the legislator to deal with these issues, I think the problem with regard to off-street prostitution is that when you go into an apartment or you go into a room with a person on their own, it's a very, very difficult thing to detect, whereas if you're on the street, the offences are there, and you can see that the 1993 legislation did deal with the problem. The problem is that the off-street prostitution now has become a lot more sophisticated and makes it much more difficult to detect.
I think I can speak for colleagues when I say we're pleased that CAB is involved as well, and there's so much money involved. Ms. Maguire, we had Dr. Friedman in here recently, and he spoke about the whole area of sexually transmitted diseases and STIs and HIV and so forth. Did that feature at all in your research?
No, it didn't.
The whole health aspect of it?
No, we didn't have an opportunity. We did talk to some individuals who worked in that area, but we weren't able to progress that section of the programme.
Okay. All right, one more.
Sorry, I forgot to ask a question earlier. Just in terms of nationality, do we have an indication of where the nationalities of the people involved are? Has anybody want to? Yeah.
Mainly Eastern European non-nationals working within the jurisdiction.
Okay.
And some would come from China as well. Yeah.
China.
Are they using, I mean, okay, I can understand the people in the EU can come in here free travel and so forth, but people from China need visas and stuff to come in. So,
well, I presume when you have a certain intent, sometimes people do slip the net and come into the jurisdiction for one reason, but they may be operating under another reason.
Okay. You mentioned earlier on about telephones. What's the situation regarding intercepting internet traffic from foreign sites, for instance?
Well, the difficulty with a lot of these websites is that they're hosted outside the jurisdiction, mainly in America and Florida, and they're very, very difficult to intercept. Very, very difficult. There are global operations put in place by Interpol, and we work closely with them.
You see the owners of the site living in one jurisdiction and the site being hosted in a totally different jurisdiction while advertising in this jurisdiction. So it's multi-jurisdictional.
Okay, yeah. Final.
Apologies, Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think now it's gone again. I know I wanted to ask it earlier and it's gone again. Oh yes, I know what it is. In relation to the people that you have encountered, did you come across people who were addicted or were dysfunctional, or what is their background?
I suppose people get into the industry for various different reasons. There's no doubt that there are people who have addiction issues. The main focus of our policing attention is not really in that area as such. It's the criminal aspect of the prostitution and policing of that itself. But look, we do provide support services to people who have addiction issues. We refer them on to other agencies that can help them as such. And our interest is in the victim and supporting the victim in as many ways as we can. So the services are available, and we have referral to those services.
Can I ask one last one? I know I'm going to drive you mad. Sorry about this now. Because the more you say, the more things come into your head. And I suppose it's to Paul and Superintendent Healy, in relation to public awareness and education for particularly young people, do you think there's an opportunity here for us to maybe educate young people around this whole trade? Because if they understand that what they're doing is engaging with somebody who may be trafficked or who's under coercion, or that they'd be less likely to do something like that if they, because a lot of people I think are buying into the whole myth of, perpetuated by the media business, I think the film business and all the rest of it, and they have this notion that it's all fine and dandy and, people are autonomous and this is their own choice. And so I just wonder if a public awareness would be something that you would agree, either parties.
Any sort of education, you know what I mean, in whatever form is presented, can, you know what I mean, from a preventative point of view, be of assistance. Look, the attraction here for a lot of people is that when you're living in a country or in an economy where the rate of pay or the earnings are very, very low, and you come to an economy where the earnings are so large that people can earn more in a day than they can in a week or 2 weeks working in the jurisdiction from where they come. The attractions are huge from that perspective. To educate people in that area, it's, you know what I mean, it may require a pan-European response in this whole area to really deal with the problems, you know what I mean, at the grassroots level.
The other interesting thing that we discovered in the research was you were asking about the age profile of individuals who were using the Women for Services. I'd have to say on a personal level I was kind of very surprised by the large percentage of what I would consider to be younger people using the services. That was actually quite amazing that you had, like we saw that in the areas where we filmed, outside apartments where women were working, and also in the phone calls that our researcher received. There seemed to be quite, for me anyway, just on a personal level, what was quite a high percentage of younger people being probably 30 or less that were using the service.
Okay, well listen, I want to thank you all for coming here today and for helping us with this. This is I think our third session, and we've one more at least to go before we start putting forward a report to the Minister. I also want to apologise to Deputy outside Technical Guard, Sean Walsh. I neglected to welcome you earlier on. You're very welcome. Your name wasn't up and I hadn't details here, so you're very welcome as well. It strikes me that this week we're talking about Magdalene laundries, and yet this whole area leaves me almost speechless what I've heard and seen so far. So again, thank you very much for coming in, and the Joint Committee is adjourned until Wednesday 13th of February 2013.